Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Madry, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
And I'm Valerie Comer.
Joining us today is Hallee Bridgeman. Hallee Bridgeman is a best-selling Christian author who writes action-packed romantic suspense focusing on realistic characters who face real-world problems. Her work has been described as everything from refreshing to heart-stopping, exciting, and edgy. Thank you for joining us today, Hallee.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so I have to say you have this enormous bio on your website. So I just took like a little piece, and I probably should have added, because you weren't always romantic suspense. You also have been writing just straight romance as well. Is that correct? Contemporary romance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 complete series, like 12 total books that are contemporary romance.
That's what I was thinking. You had a lot. So
And
that deserves to be mentioned.
historical as well, right? So you've been
I do. I have,
all
well,
about-
they're not romance. I have a World War II series too. Yeah.
Oh, you do. That's right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
You're all
But
over
they're
the
just suspense. They're not.
All right, awesome. So today we're talking about single moms in contemporary Christian romance. They're a pretty popular trope. I feel like you see single mom stuff all the time when you're browsing titles. And not just CCR, you see it in mainstream romance as well. The single mom seems to be a really exciting heroine trope. So Hallee actually volunteered to talk single moms with us, and I thought it might be fun to know why, Hallee, did the idea of single moms appeal to you as something that you would come talk to us with?
Well, I was a single mom. Well, I was a divorced mom. I wasn't a single mom.
That's
I
a single mom.
I had singular control of a child. And I have written it into a couple of different stories in a couple of different ways. I've done it in a suspense, and I've done it in a contemporary romance, and then I've done unplanned pregnancies a couple of times.
Mhm. Okay.
So it just felt like something that inside Christian romance, it's handled a certain way, and it just felt like something that would be fun to come talk about.
Okay, yay. And I agree. And we're going to talk about, I think, some of how Christian romance handles single moms for sure. So let's do that. Let's talk generalities. And so what is it that you see happening in Christian romance with single moms? Or I'm sort of just going to pass the microphone for people to wax poetically about single moms, and feel free to chime in if you have a thought related to what someone else is saying. I sent out some ideas for where this could go. So, what you're seeing, how it's handled, what you're maybe tired of seeing happen, what you love about single moms. There's a whole gamut. So we'll start with Narelle, and you can pick one and we'll talk about it.
Well, it's interesting. So I've actually never written a single mum book, which I didn't really think about until I was actually looking at it the other day. And it's not a trope that I go looking for, interestingly. And I really had to think about which ones I read. So I have a couple to talk about. And I think it's a lot of some of the criticisms you'll get about Christian romance is that it sets up unrealistic expectations in some of the tropes. And I think if I look at my life from when I was younger all the way through to now, I've had someone close to me who's been a single mum, and it's not necessarily a happy ending. So I kind of have it's really good when it is a good ending and something good happens, but hasn't necessarily been my experience of watching what's happened in real life. So it's an interesting trope for me. And I was thinking about the other reason I probably don't seek it out is, and this is probably very different to you guys, I think this is an Australian thing, is that we've always had a very big social safety net for single parents. Not so good now, like they have to go to work and the kids are quite young, and it used to be a bit of a gravy train though when I was growing up. You could literally become a professional single mum and live off the government. And I grew up on the northern beaches in Sydney and knew people whose mums basically just went to the beach and lived off the government and didn't actually work, or didn't work very much. So I think that's I think your experiences is what you sort of bring to the topic. So I'm kind of a bit mixed on it. Like I do love reading it, but I do sort of have that awareness that sometimes what happens in these stories is not necessarily real to life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Valerie, what about you?
One of the things that I really enjoy about it, I think, is that yeah, it's a character type, but there are so many tropes that you can use still with it. You know, all the way from the secret baby on up, right? You can have never married, you can have widows, divorcees. There's a wide range of characters that could find themselves in this situation, sometimes through their own action, sometimes through like really no fault of their own kind of thing. So I feel like it's a fertile ground for all kinds of storylines.
All right, Hallee, what about you?
I was really digging into research on this because I wanted to see what else was out there. And one thing that I discovered over and over and over again that seems to be like a very popular trope is that it's always the baby's dad who is, or the child's dad that is the romance. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of funny because I've done it. Like one of my books, that was my romance. It was the secret baby. It was he didn't know he was a dad. And one that I just read that was phenomenal. It was so well done. The same thing. He didn't know he was a dad. But I did one recently where she got pregnant and decided to keep the baby, and they started dating during her pregnancy. And when he found out that she was pregnant, you know, this moment of what his answer was, if she'd had a child, I would have dated her. It's not, so what's the difference? It's just, she's carrying the baby now instead of 3 years from now or 4 years from now. So, but it's interesting, one of the things that seems to be a lack is the divorced mom. I think that Christian authors still kind of like carefully maneuver through that because it used to be something you weren't supposed to do. And now, you have the huge divorce rate inside the church. And so, I've done the divorced mom, I've done the single mom, I've done the abandoned mom.
I wonder if, and I didn't do any statistics or anything. When I'm thinking it through though, real quick now, the divorced mom ones that I've seen almost inevitably end up being a reunion with the husband, the ex. And I wonder if that's because in a Christian circle, we just expect that not only does the child get a father, but we have to restore the marriage because that is even better. But it's super unrealistic. Like if you got divorced from this person, there were probably reasons for that. Probably really big reasons for that. Yeah. People don't. There were reasons. So to have a reunion after divorce, I think you got to work out why they got divorced in the first place really well. And I think that to me sort of, I've written a couple single moms. I always struggle with it because I do feel like of the tropes out there, they tend to have the more unrealistic expectations. Like in real life, the single moms I've known are like, I don't introduce anyone I'm dating to my child till we've been serious for a year. I don't even necessarily let my child know that I'm dating until we've been out a couple times and I know that it's serious enough for them to know that this is something that's happening. All of these sort of things that are set up to protect the child, to make sure that the child is not getting attached to someone who's in and out of their life, and those are, I think, really good things, because the mothers should be super concerned about their child and that's their number one priority. But, in 60,000 words, you don't have time for that. So a lot of the times, even in 80,000 words, you don't really have time for that. So your single mom books tend to be, like just sweep you off your feet. And of course, I love your child. None of the struggle of like, this is another man's child. And am I really okay with that? And if the father is at all still in their life, what does that look like? The reality, I think, of dating as a single parent is way different than what we can realistically put in a book. So
And it's probably, it's not necessarily that sort of fun element, that sort of escapist element. I think it's the balance is really difficult, the balance between looking at what happens in real life and, as you said, the challenges of how do you introduce your child to someone, a new relationship, etc., versus actually having a fun romance. Like the romance arc's often very different. It can be a lot longer. So a lot of the CCR will often have a story arc where it's usually resolved within 12 months. It's unusual for a book to probably go over 12 months in terms of a time span. Whereas if you're looking at like a real life single parent romance, that 12 months, as you said, the child might never ever meet the hero. And I don't think readers would take to that in the same way. So I think there's a lot of unique challenges, and particularly with divorced parents. That's always been my frustration with single parents, is it's always a widow or a widower. Mm-hmm. And it's like there's this acknowledgement that people don't get divorced, or if they do get divorced, they're destined to be single forever and can't have a second chance at love. And I think over time that's changing. I think that's a really good thing, that we're actually seeing what was considered edgy in terms of divorce is becoming a bit more normal.
Yeah. Well, and we have, the same divorce rate inside the church as outside of the church. And so you have people who need to be ministered to in that way. Yeah. You just need to, there has to be a way to put it into a fictional story with the romance and the baby and the child and 60,000 words, and everyone is happy at the end. I mean, I did
challenge.
My divorced mom was abandoned because it was also an autism story. So the dad can deal with the fact that his son was autistic, and so he just fled and left, and she was completely a single mom without the father in the picture, because this was, a 40,000 word novella. I only had so much room. Yeah. And that was the easy way out. And so, but I did make a divorce, and I think that was my first divorce character. And I had probably 3 or 4 very early reviews that criticized the fact that she was a Christian who was divorced.
Really?
And she'd been abandoned. She hadn't sought a divorce.
Yeah, I have a couple divorced characters who get those reviews as well. And they don't have kids, but even still, it's, unless you paint the person who they were divorced from as this really horrible human being, where of course you got divorced from them.
Well, a long time ago.
A long time ago. Yeah. It's tough because Christian readers in general, with those sorts of situations, will say, "Oh, bring on the edgy, bring on the realistic. That's what I want." And you give it to them, and they're like, "Not this. This is not. No, right. No. Bring on the fantasy." Yeah.
I had a character whose wife had numerous affairs openly, and then I needed them to be separated, and I couldn't divorce them. This was 9 years ago, so it couldn't be done yet. So I skied her into a tree, pregnant with another man's child, and killed her. And I thought, I've never once ever criticized that, not once. And then I write this abandoned mother, and suddenly it's like this horrible thing.
That's crazy, eh?
It was crazy.
When I
had to get a bad review on that one. I mean, I've got bad reviews, but not for that. Like, not for
when I look back at my catalog of pushing 40 books, I would have to stop and count, and we don't have time for that. And I've had a few divorce characters, but it occurs to me that they've always been the man. Oh. And I think so, without like going through title by title.
Right.
And so, yes, I've had some truly single moms who've never been married, and I've got a couple of widows in there. But that's interesting. I guess we'll have to look at that situation and redo it. But I agree, Elizabeth, with what you said. It's okay. It may be sort of okay if the other partner was like just a really horrible human being, and there was abuse and stuff. But some people actually apparently get divorced fairly amicably and pass the children back and forth without anyone fearing for the children's lives. And that then the perception would tend to be more, well, they should get back together. Even though really, if this is your best friend, you're like, no, actually you should not get back together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was, Valerie, you raised what I was going to mention next, is that the whole, the parenting orders, I mean, there's sometimes court cases, child custody battles, and some people can quite happily divorce and co-parent in a really functional way, and in a way that is probably the best outcome for their kids. And you can't judge that from in real life, from outside of the relationship. If you're not in that relationship, you can't really say what's best or not, because you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. But I think the whole concept of the whole sort of changing from 1 week on, 1 week off with parenting, or every second weekend with dad, I mean, you just don't see that in Christian romance, but that's what actually will happen in real life.
I did that recently, but we'll talk about that later.
I haven't got up to that book yet.
The other thing that I really enjoy about single mom romances is I love the kids. There's so much room there for all kinds of humor and interest. And you've got the whole gamut, right? From like babes in arms to teenagers. There's so much room there for all kinds of additional conflict, but also for bits of humor. And then, that's a great addition, I think, to a story. Again, remembering that whole 55 to 60,000 words.
Yeah, I was surprised how much I enjoyed writing a kid. It was like my 5th book, and she was just such a fun character to write. And then the autistic kid I wrote, I just made him my son, and so it was just like a labor of love to create him on the page.
I remember reading that one and
fun. I love writing.
Seeing that, yeah.
Definitely the kids, I think, are what often will draw readers and writers to that trope, the single parent, because it's hard to work kids into your story otherwise, like unless they're from previous couples, and they come in, but then they're not in the spotlight as much. So for sure, the kids are fun. I agree.
Kids and dogs.
Kids and dogs, exactly.
But you can have dogs in any trope.
Right.
Right, yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead.
It's amazing to me how often I see kids on the cover of a contemporary romance. It's fun to see.
Yeah. Love Inspired is doing that more and more. Fewer couples on the covers.
I was picturing all the Love Inspired in my head.
Yeah, and more adult and child, either the hero or the heroine. I've been seeing that trend lately, and I'm like,
And always
it's always twins, yeah.
Not always, only 90% of the time. And 5% triplets. Sorry.
Right, yeah. All the twins.
All the twins. Yeah. All right, so let's transition into some specific books and talk about some of our favorite single mom. This was hard for me because I was going through all my favorite single parent books, and like 90% of them are single dads. And I'm like, no, moms, single moms.
Right, yeah.
So let's start with specific single mom books. And Hallee, did you have some? Let's start with you.
Me? I'm sorry, you broke up.
Oh, Hallee. Let's start with Hallee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one that I just read, and it was phenomenal. It was Becky Wade's Meant to Be Mine. Host of award-winning book, and the way that it was one of those secret baby ones, and so the hero was like uber masculine. So his discovery of being a father was brilliant. It was brilliant. Like I want to go back and reread it and study how she did it, because you could the emotions were palpable. And
that one's on my Kindle. I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, no, highly recommend. Really, really well done.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the daughter was incredible. Like
how old?
Like I want that kid. I'm ready for it. 5.
That's a fun age.
It's a fun age, and she's fun. So
cool
with her cowboy boots and yeah.
Excellent. All right, Valerie.
I found that a couple of the ones that I came up with were foster moms. So a different way to get your single mom in. And one is Not Until Christmas Morning by Valerie M. Bodden. And I have mentioned this book a few times on the podcast before, but the heroine, her name is Leah, decides that she really wants to take on a teenager in foster care. And so she gets Jackson, who is not really all that keen on having a single foster mom or being in foster care at all, or people in general, anyone. And so I just really love the way that Valerie balanced that back and forth between this foster mom and this teenage boy who she hadn't known growing up, right? And I mean, he wasn't cute and cuddly and saying the cute, winsome things. He was a little more brisk than that. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. When I started thinking about single moms, I went, ooh, how about a single foster mom?
Narelle?
Well, as I said, I had to go looking for books. So I started with looking at what you guys have written, because there's like 100 and something books to look at. So I thought that was a good place to start. Now, the story that I actually haven't finished it because I've run out of time this week. My week's gone a bit pear-shaped towards the end. But anyway, is Hallee's book, Blizzard in the Bluegrass. Because I remember it's in a box set, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's the first
Yeah.
book in a box. So I had to go hunting for it. But I remember thinking I need to read this book because the son is autistic. And so I have an autistic son. So I'm probably I've just over halfway through, and I just love it because I can just so relate as a mum to this gorgeous boy. He's just beautiful. And he's 8 and he has no filter and he just says what he thinks, and it's just so true to life. And I think it's such a good book if you want to understand what it's like to parent a child with autism. I highly recommend looking at Hallee's book. And it's a lovely romance as well. Yeah.
I like that one as well.
Yeah.
So another thumb up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Well, especially coming from another autism mom, that's very cool that you're enjoying it, because it could have gone either way. You could have been like, no, that's not what it's like.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's the relationship. I think that often with autistic kids, they'll have what they call a dependent person, and so in a single mum situation, that's going to be the mum. But I really loved how her dad was there as well. So he had that male role model influence, and it was a really functional family setup. Before she actually meets the hero. So she's not looking to get married because she needs to change her life. She falls in love, and it sort of naturally evolves sort of from friends to more. And I just thought that was beautiful.
Excellent. I chose A Sudden Spark by Liwen. And I love her Spark brothers. All of her Spark brothers are fabulous. But this one is a marriage of convenience. Bria is a single mom, and there are some custody issues happening, and it becomes clear that she really needs to be in a stable relationship in order to maintain custody of her child. And so her best friend is like, well, then we'll get married and that'll be fine. So it's just kind of fun. It's probably not super high on the realistic scale, but it's super fun. And I just liked Bria, especially because she had totally friend zoned Brandon. And so there's that sort of chemistry issue on his side, but she's not feeling any of it. And so he has to really wear her down, which I think is kind of fun. So that was mine. I think we have time to go around a second time if people have a second pick to share. Hallee?
I'm really bad with names, and
That's okay. I'll Google it.
T.K. Chapin.
Yeah.
Right.
T.K. Chapin wrote one about a woman whose sister goes to drug rehab, and she gets custody of her 2 nephews. And so she's not only a single mom, she's like a single mom who didn't start with the infant and grow into that role. She just suddenly has 2 children. Okay. And he did a really good job of that. There's so much struggle there. There's so much emotion and so much chaos, and it was well portrayed.
Okay.
But I'm so bad. I'm really bad with names and I can't think of it.
That's okay. I'll find it. And put it in the show notes. That's easy enough. All right, Valerie.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's totally good. Valerie, do you have a second one?
I do. I'm going to go with another foster parent one.
This is not the foster care episode. This is
Okay,
single
well,
mom episode.
I'll keep my note for that one as well. You can pass. I can tout some of my own if you'd rather.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I recently read Saving Grace by Amy Anguish. And Michelle isn't a single mom in the traditional way, or even the foster mom. She's in an accident in which this couple is killed and the baby survives. And she feels very compelled by this baby. And even though the accident wasn't her fault, there was, like a third party involved in that. But her parents are foster parents and they are kind of semi-retired from fostering, but she talks them into taking on this baby. And she decides that she's going to adopt this baby because she just feels so strongly that they were brought together for a purpose. And this is another Friends to More romance. And I'm interested in the fact that it seems as if it's often the guy who holds the spark and the girl who's like completely oblivious. Why would she want to like fall in love with her best friend? Like, this is normal. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic as to how normal that is. But that's
very tropish too.
Isn't it though? Yeah. So he's a youth pastor and he decides that he's going to do whatever it takes to help her, even though he's not convinced it's the right thing for her to do. But because they're best friends and she feels so strongly about this baby that he will do whatever it takes, including marry her, if that's what will make this come together for her to adopt this baby. So there was just a few different tropes kind of landing on their head in that one, and I quite enjoyed it.
All right, excellent.
It's loving in his way, Elizabeth.
Oh, excellent. Look at you.
Yeah.
All right, Narelle, what about you?
Just take me a second.
I've actually been very good this episode. I've actually staying right on topic without deviating. I've been very good.
Like other people.
But I'm not always good, so that's okay. I'll take the win on this one. Okay, so the book I'm going to talk about is Valerie Comer's Pinky Promise, which was when I was thinking about single parents that came to mind. And like you, I kept finding single dads. But Pinky Promise is one of the Riverbend novellas. I read it a while ago, and silly me did not write a book recommendation and put it on my blog, because that's how I usually find books to talk about, is I do a search on my blog. So I'm going to have to rectify that. But it's a fun one because it's a single mom and a single dad, and they each have a 6-year-old daughter, and the daughters are best friends, and they hatch this grand plan to matchmake their parents, and it is just adorable. And it is so fun. And Valerie talks about how fun kids are. I think she writes kids really well, and I remember just loving these. They were just adorable, these girls.
Yeah.
They share a birthday, and so they decide that means they're really twins.
Yeah.
And I mean, twins are sisters, right? I mean, we all know about twins.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Very fun.
The twin trope.
Right, exactly. My second one is Low Country Hero by Tobin McClain, and it's not technically CCR. It is sweet. And
you talk about knee-breaking rules.
But it does have faith elements in it. It's sweet, clean, and she's tricky. She sneaks the faith in there pretty well for a mainstream Harlequin book. So, and it is their sweet, clean, so it's not like the other Harlequin books. It's not those. It's good. And I liked it because this is a single mom who I don't believe she was ever married to the man, but she is abused and on the run with her 5-year-old twin daughters. Twins, yeah, more twins. But so she's got a lot of scars and a lot of baggage, and I really feel like Lee does a good job handling, it's not like suddenly this man makes everything okay. There's still scars and baggage to be worked through. And I like to see that, where it's not just suddenly love fixes everything, because it doesn't. It doesn't. And so it's a really good one, and it's the start to a series. I enjoyed the whole series of it's just a trilogy, but it's a fun trilogy, I think.
I enjoyed that one as well.
Yeah. So, and that probably we're probably a little bit close to over. So maybe maybe we should take a quick minute for final single mom thoughts, if anybody has a final thought on single moms.
I'm going to take a second to talk about my book, Give Me Another Chance, Cowboy, because we talked earlier about parents sharing custody and stuff and whether they get back together or not. And I realized a few months ago that I had never done that, where the couple shares custody and then comes back together. So that was a really fun one to write, because he has custody on the weekends, she has custody during the week. They're very hostile when they trade the child back and forth. And so it was great fun to write that one. Mm-hmm. 5-year-old again.
Always with the 5-year-olds.
I think that's for age, you know.
Yeah, it's fun.
For the age. I asked my reader group about single mom books, and this consensus came back that they want to see more books where the mother isn't struggling, like that she's set, she's not financially destitute, she doesn't need to have romance, she just wants, you know, she just is living her life and has a romance just like if she was not a single mom. And I thought that was pretty profound.
Yeah, I just wrote one of those, but it'll be out this summer. One of my billionaires. I say it's one of my billionaires. She's not a billionaire yet, but she's working for it. So, but she's pretty set. And he's like 9, so not a 5-year-old. So.
Yeah, my single moms have all been professionals. Because that's how I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah, I'm kind of glad now though.
But that's also real to life now. Like, I mean, most women are working. It's being a stay-at-home mum is not as common as it used to be, primarily, well, in Australia anyway. It's for financial reasons. It can be quite unaffordable to do that. And a lot of women do have their own financial resources. And if you've had 2 people working and the relationship splits, often there is enough money for both to have 2 households, sort of, it's like a household is split into 2 households, and for everyone to be able to financially provide. So I think that can actually be a reflection of real life, and that's probably why the readers are asking for it, because that can be quite a common experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Thank you, Hallee, for hanging out with us. This was super fun.
Sure.
And let everybody know where they can find you and your books.
You can find me at halleebridgeman.com. And links to all my books are easily found on the website.
Awesome. All right. We'll put a link in the show notes so that you can just click away and be there. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at Story Chats. You can find all the information you need at inspiromance.com/storychats. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.